It's a few days after Tisha B'Av, and many people have spent the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av focusing on speech, on the way we speak about other people and to other people. And perhaps we've taken on in our mind an understanding that we'd like to do better in this area. I know that many people who are listening were part of a group, a large group of people across the world who every single day of the 3 weeks were learning from my book, Words Change Worlds. And I hope that that experience of learning it either in a group or individually has also given you some sort of clarity as to how important this area is. An aspect that often is not talked about, and perhaps this is something that we can think about moving forward. An aspect that's not talked about so much is the area of listening to Lashon Hara. I'm sure there's many people, many of you, who wouldn't, you're not the type of person who would want to sit and spread the latest gossip. You perhaps aren't the type of person who starts saying negative things about this politician and that politician. But many people who are like that, they'll still listen. They'll still be part of a conversation where other people are saying these negative things. And perhaps we've convinced ourselves that I'm not saying anything bad, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I'm just listening. The Chafetz Chaim writes very, very clearly, bringing sources, that even listening to Lashon Hara, even when a person doesn't even intend to believe what they hear, is not allowed according to Jewish law. And the real question that we have to have is, first of all, why is that? What could possibly be wrong with listening? And secondly, if there is something wrong with listening, how do I control that? If we're talking about the way I speak, well, it's my mouth, it's going to be difficult, but perhaps I can take control of my mouth. How can I control other people's mouths so that I don't hear negative things? Let's first of all focus on the why. What could possibly be wrong with listening to Lashon Hara? Now, there's three main aspects to this. And today is just a very, very quick summary overview of the whole area of listening to Lashon Hara. So very quickly, the three main areas. Number one, even if you don't intend to believe what you are being told, or you don't believe it, the reality is that when we hear things, they seep into our psyche and they affect the way we see the world. That's just the reality of it. If you think about the way advertisements work, an advertisement will often say something or present an image of something, and if we were to sit down logically and talk about this, do you think that that is logically true? Most people would say no, of course it's not. They're just exaggerating, or it's part of the way they're, like, for example, when they say, oh, the best this, or the, really, it's the best? Is it really the best? Have they done studies? Or what criteria are they working with? If we were to sit down logically and say, is this true? We'd say, it's just the words they use. And yet, the reality is that when you get to the shop and you're looking at the different options there on the shelves, do you know which one you go put out your hand to grab? Yeah, it's the one that the advert said to you was the best. Because in the moment, that's the message that is imprinted on your heart. And therefore, somebody may say something negative to you about somebody. And you may not even truly believe it. But next time you see that person, you will view them colored by the information that you have received. And in some ways, I want to be very clear about this. Do we want that? Think about the last time you heard something negative. Somebody came and said something negative to you about somebody that you see regularly. You perhaps know this person and you've seen all of their positive sides. And then somebody tells you this negative thing, and it wasn't told to you for a constructive purpose. It wasn't told to you because this person is dangerous for you and you need to stay away from them. That's not the reason why you were told. It was just gratuitous gossip. Doesn't it upset you that your perception of that person is now colored? That you don't feel as easy with them as you did before? Can you not see that you've been harmed by that? And it's the same with politics. Now, obviously, within the realm of politics, we need to know some sort of information to be able to make sensible judgments and vote for somebody who's going to be good for us, whoever the us happens to be. I mean, I live in Israel. I'm very Israel focused. So obviously, when it comes to any form of election around the world, my first focus is how will that affect the Jewish people in Israel. But whatever it happens to be, that the thing that you're, obviously we need to know information. What is this person like when it comes to this particular issue? But the constant digging down into people's lives and mocking people and laughing at them, do we need that? And doesn't it make you feel a little bit uncomfortable when all you're walking around with is this sort of negative ad or negative comment that somebody made, and you just can't see past it to be able to weigh up real aspects as to who's right or not right for your community? Doesn't it bother you when Israel is in the news and there are sound bites that are going around that are just often slander? Sometimes there's an element of truth to it, but it's so captivating, and the story is so interesting. It gets a whole massive group of people around the world completely convinced that the Jews are in the wrong. Doesn't that bother you? This is the reality of listening to Lashon Hara. Even if you don't believe it, it affects the way you see the person, the group, whoever it is that the conversation was about. The second problem with listening to Lashon Hara is that you're essentially enabling. If nobody listened to Lashon Hara, if nobody listened to negative speech, then nobody would be able to speak it, because everybody would just walk away. And you'll tell me, but I'm just one person. What can one person do? One person can reduce it slightly. And if everybody thinks I'm one person, then it will never help. But if everybody says I can make a difference, at least with my part, then altogether, all of those individuals will make a massive difference. And the third problem is, even if you're not speaking, if you're listening, you are getting your kicks, enjoyment, and entertainment from somebody else being ripped apart. I always compare this to gladiators or the Roman circus. Back then, we think perhaps some people have this glorified view of what the Roman circus was. It was a horrendous and horrific entertainment system where people, normally slaves, were forced to fight each other to the death for the entertainment of the people watching, where they called and they booed and they cheered. And then right at the end, when one of them's on the floor about to be killed, the victor would turn to the audience and essentially ask them, should I kill this person or not? And they would decide whether this person would be killed. What does it say about a group of people that they get their entertainment by watching somebody else being ripped apart, literally, with blood spurting everywhere? Now, perhaps we don't do that. Not literally, not physically. But we do, and we have whole systems. We have magazines, newspapers, gossip groups, social media, which have been set up. The whole purpose of them is to give you entertainment as you watch somebody else being ripped apart. Maybe not literally, but verbally, emotionally. What does it say about us that is how we get our entertainment? What does it say about us that gossip magazines and gossip websites are some of the best selling and best visited magazines and websites in the world? What does it say about us as people that is how we get our entertainment. And what does it say about what we're doing to ourselves when we get our entertainment watching somebody be ripped apart? So for those three reasons, the Chavetz Chaim makes it clear that listening to Lashon Hara, even with no intent to believe it, is not allowed. So that's the why. But let's deal with the how. How am I supposed to control you? Am I supposed to put my hand over your mouth? So let's go through the things that, in theory, one should do, but practically, we don't do. The first is, there is a mitzvah in the Torah, there is a commandment in the Torah called Hocheach Tochiach et Amitecha. Hocheach Tochiach Samisecha, which means you should surely rebuke or reprove your fellow. That means if somebody is doing something wrong, which is harmful to them, it's harmful to them spiritually, emotionally, perhaps even physically sometimes, a person is obligated, because they care about that person, to go over to them in a nice way, in a non-embarrassing way, and try and encourage them to change their ways. The reality, however, and this is already talked about in the times of the Talmud, the reality, however, is that many of us do not know how to do that well, and it normally backfires and makes it worse. I remember in the early years when I was trying to work on my speech, if I heard somebody say Lashon Hara, I became this sort of, I don't know what you call it in English, a kanoi in Hebrew, a person who's like, standing up for what's right. If I heard somebody say Lashon Hara, I would go over to them and I would say, that's called Lashon Hara, we're not allowed to say it. Normally what would happen is, I would get one of the following responses. Who are you to tell me that? Only last week I heard you say something. Or, if you knew what I knew about this person, then you wouldn't say that to me. Because blah, blah, blah. And then they end up saying more Lashon Hara. I've encouraged them to actually dig deeper. Or they'll tell me, no, I'm saying this for a constructive purpose. They're not saying it for a constructive purpose. And even if they are, they don't know any of the conditions that one needs to fulfill to be able to say something negative about somebody for a constructive purpose. They've got no idea. They don't know the Jewish laws. But it doesn't matter. In their mind, they're doing it for constructive purpose. And how dare you stop me? In fact, I'm going to spread it even more. And therefore, because it normally makes things worse, in most cases, unless you're very, very close to the person, or you know that person is trying to work in this area and they would be grateful to hear, in general, telling somebody that what they're doing is wrong is very, very unhelpful. So what other options do we have? Well, the Talmud tells us something fascinating. Why are our fingers long and thin? Like pegs, like tent pegs, the way they used to have them. Wouldn't it be better if our fingers were like a Swiss Army knife? We could have one finger that would be great for cutting, scissors, and one a fork or a spoon, some other implement on the other hand. There could be a whole variety of different things. Say the sages in the Talmud, the reason why they're long and thin is so that they fit nicely inside our ears. And if somebody is saying something that we don't want to hear, we can put our fingers in our ears. And then we can't hear it. It's like a protection. Not only that, the sages say, in the same way as our mouth has two protectors, the teeth and the lips, so we've been made with two protectors for our ears, our fingers, and also this bit, this earlobe, which you may have thought was for earrings. The reason why we have this is so it folds up, it slips into that hole, and you can then put your fingers on top. And now you've got a double protection. Now you really can't hear what a person's saying. Is that what you're supposed to do? By the way, have you ever noticed how perfectly your fingers fit inside your ear hole? I've noticed that irrespective of age, a person's fingers always fit their ear hole. Hashem designed it that way purposely. Is that what you're supposed to do? Somebody's coming along and saying something negative to you and you stick your fingers in your ears? Is that what no, I can't hear you. Is that what you're supposed to do? The answer is no. In today's society, that would only make things worse. It would probably encourage them to speak more negatively. You're not engaging with them as a human being. They view that as a disrespect. Of course they're not going to change. It's only going to dig their behavior deeper and make them do it more often. And they'll probably speak Lashon Hara about you. They'll go around speaking negatively about you. You've just basically kicked off a whole extra level of gossip, like you've moved on to the next level in the video game of gossip. And therefore, those things practically, although they are theoretically good advice, practically they rarely work. So what should we do? The answer that I received from my teacher, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, is that the best thing to do is distraction. Distraction. That's really the best thing to do. Somebody's in the middle of speaking to you, you just reminded me. You just reminded me something. What was it? Well, in reality, what they reminded you is that you're not allowed to listen to Lashon Hara. But it can be anything. Oh, you just reminded me I've got to do something. It may not even have anything to do with what they're speaking. It could be that you've noticed something outside. But what I found works best is when you distract them about something about them. Because people love speaking about themselves. It's just the most amazing thing for people. So somebody could be speaking to you and you could say, oh, wow. I'm sorry to interrupt, but where'd you get that tie from? Or where'd you get that dress from? Or who does your hair? Or where's that necklace from? Or have you got new glasses? They look so lovely on you. And then you keep the conversation going. If you just have a moment, they'll just get back to the conversation. But if you keep it going, you say, oh yes, I got glasses from somewhere and it was this, but this. And if you keep the conversation going and the gossip had no real purpose, it was just there to fill time or, for entertainment purposes, they'll forget about it and they'll move on. And most of the time, and I've done this many, many times with my students, I've acted it out with my students, most of the time they have absolutely no idea that you've even done it and changed the subject. And if they do, so then they'll think that you have ADHD. Well, most people have ADHD today. I've probably got some ADHD. Most people have ADHD. So they'll think you've got ADHD. That's fine. My point is this. Use whatever rudeness has become acceptable in society to get out of listening to Lashon Hara. That is the point. That's the focus. If that means that somebody's in the middle of speaking to you and you answer your phone. Oh, sorry, my phone's buzzing. You pull out the phone. Sorry. One second. Hello. Yeah? Oh, really? Oh, okay. I'm coming straight away. And then you put it back and you say, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to continue this conversation another time. And then you walk off. Now, yes, that is rude. It is rude that somebody's in the middle of a conversation with you and you let somebody else via some instrument interrupt you. That's called being rude. But it's a rudeness that has become so accepted in society. That is what you should use. You should utilize anything like that. Or go to the bathroom. Or if you happen to be in a group and you're not the sole listener, it's very easy to slip out. You just slip out. I have been at a Sheva Brachos for a newly married couple. And for some reason, the friend of the bridegroom, who may have learnt this from certain practices among other cultures, decided that this would be a perfect opportunity to start speaking badly in a jokey way of the previous misdemeanors of the bridegroom. Now, I've never understood this, even among cultures that are not Jewish. I've never understood why you would possibly want to start somebody else's marriage off by revealing all of these negative secrets. It doesn't make sense to me. But some cultures do it. That doesn't mean that our culture should be doing it. But this particular friend of the bridegroom decided that it was an appropriate audience in front of the bridegroom's new wife and the bridegroom's new wife's parents and other family members to start revealing his previous misdemeanors when he was younger. I don't need to stay for that. I can get out and walk out. There could be a whole variety of reasons I'm walking out. Without making a scene, I don't need to make a scene. Making a scene, as I said, most of the time is not going to be helpful. Perhaps there'll be certain times where it will be, but most of the time it's not helpful. But for you yourself, you have to sit there and listen. You can get up and walk out. This is what I found to be the most helpful of situations. Now, let's be honest, it doesn't always work. There are times where you've tried distracting, you've been to the bathroom a couple of times, you've answered the phone, but the person is still intent on telling you this. Again, we're talking about Lashon Hara for no real constructive purpose. It's just gossip. It's just digging into the dirt of the politics or whatever it happens to be. And you've tried everything and you're stuck. What should you do then? Well, the Chafetz Chaim tells us that if a person is stuck in a situation and they've tried to get out of it, they're stuck in a situation and they didn't go there specifically to listen to Lashon Hara. It's not a gathering of people who gather together just to gossip, right? Like, for example, you see sometimes in these clips of certain barbershops where guys who've got nothing better to do just sit there and they sit there to gossip. That's not the, well, it's not a group of ladies who get together every single day or once a week just to share the latest gossip. Because if that's what it is, you should have known before and you shouldn't have been there. But let's say it's not like that. It's a wedding. You've gone there for a wedding. And there's somebody there who's you try to get out of it. And nothing works. The Chafetz Chaim says you're allowed to listen at that point, but you have to fulfill 3 conditions. Now, these 3 conditions are specifically there to combat the 3 problems of listening to Lashon Hara. The first condition is, as you're listening, inside your heart and your mind, you have to be very, very clear, I don't believe what I'm being told. Or there may be some truth to what I'm being told, but the negative spin on what happened is untrue. It's based on this person's misunderstanding or personal bias, or perhaps they're lying or exaggerating. There are many, 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 many reasons why, but there's a lot of room in life to know that what's reported in a newspaper or what you hear even from a close friend may not be 100% accurate. Because we're used to sharing made up stories, or we're used to exaggerating, or we're used to presenting a story as if we saw it, even though we only heard it third hand. Because that's what we're like as a society. And therefore, a person, when they're being told some gratuitous Lashon Hara, in their mind they need to be thinking carefully, I tried to get out of this, I can't see another way of getting out of it. So I'm listening, but I'm not going to believe the negativity. And in that way, by focusing on not believing, hopefully it won't seep in and change the person's psyche. So that combats the first problem of listening to Lashon Hara. The second thing, the Chafetz Chaim says, don't say anything to encourage the person, and don't show any facial expression that shows that you're happy or eager to hear this information. Because when you do that, then you are more enabling and encouraging the person to speak. Instead, you should keep your face stone cold. If you can, says the Chafetz Chaim, you should make a scowl, like. But most of us can't do that in the face of somebody saying Lashon Hara. I've seen my teacher, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkovitz, do it. When somebody says Lashon Hara to him, he makes a face as if he's been stabbed in the heart. Sometimes that works. Sometimes the person gets the message and they stop, but sometimes not. But the Chafetz Chaim says that's an extra. You don't have to do that. At least show no encouraging face. Don't nod your head as if you're agreeing to the Lashon Hara. Definitely don't say you agree. And don't even smile or show any facial expression that encourages. And finally, to deal with this whole concept of what, you're getting your entertainment from this? Inside your heart, get no enjoyment from this. You're being force-fed something that's really not healthy for you. It's not healthy for you emotionally. It's not healthy for you spiritually. Most people who keep kosher, if they were being force-fed pig, even if it tasted good, they wouldn't be happy about it. They wouldn't get a real enjoyment from it because it feels disgusting to them because they know they're not allowed to do it and they know it's harmful for them spiritually. We have to have the same mindset when it comes to negative information about people. We need to think to ourselves, this is harmful for me. I don't want to be here. This is uncomfortable. If a person can keep these 3 conditions, number 1, to work hard and not believing it. Number 2, to show no facial expression that encourages the speaker to speak more. And number 3, to get no enjoyment inside themselves, or to work on not getting enjoyment inside themselves or entertainment, then if they can't get out of it, they're allowed to listen. But sometimes there's a requirement to listen. And that is if somebody is telling you something for a constructive purpose. In Hebrew, this is called Lashon Hara L'To'elet, Lashon Hara L'To'elet, Lashon Hara for a constructive purpose. There are times, and it's beyond the subject matter today, but there are times where a person is allowed, or maybe even has to, share negative information about somebody for the good of society, for the good of the listener, perhaps even for the good of the speaker, for their emotional well-being. If you can tell, or if there's a good chance that what they're saying is actually for a constructive purpose, perhaps they're coming to you and you can see that they are emotionally laden by a difficult situation that they're in, well then, assuming that they're fulfilling the conditions, there are conditions that they need to fulfill, but you can assume that they're doing the right thing, you're allowed to listen. You're allowed to be a listening ear. This person needs your support. Or this person's telling you for you. So obviously you should be a listening ear so that you can listen, so that you can protect yourself. Even so, even when you're allowed to listen, we are instructed to not believe the negativity 100%, with the understanding that sometimes people misunderstand, and perhaps I'm getting the wrong information. Sometimes people see things from their own bias, their own spin, their own, colored by their own view of the world, which is not a reality. They may have seen somebody do something and then assumed that it was because of this negative thing, but in reality, the person was only trying to help. Understand that sometimes people do lie and sometimes people do exaggerate. Yes, even a good friend of yours. And therefore, if a person's telling you something for a constructive purpose, you're allowed to listen. But to believe it 100%, no. Instead, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to take that information, understand that it could be true, and do whatever is necessary to take the necessary precautions in this situation. So that means if somebody's telling you something, you're about to go into business with somebody, and the person tells you, I want you to know this person is dangerous in business. They do illegal practices, they steal, they embezzle. So you heard it. It may or may not be true. That doesn't mean you believe it, but you take all precaution. You do more investigations. You see if you can find out more information about what this person was like. Start building up information. If you're not capable right now of building up any information, of looking into it, you're entitled to not go into business with that person because it could be true. Not because you've decided 100% in your mind it's true, but it could be true and I'm required to protect myself. Or if the person is coming to you for emotional support and they tell you that this person did this bad thing and this thing and it's weighing them down, okay, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe they meant it, maybe they didn't mean it, but there's somebody here who's in an emotionally difficult situation. So do all the things you can to support them. Say that must be hard. See if you can give them direction. Maybe you can give them emotional support. Maybe just listening is all they need. But to actually believe it 100%, no. We've all had life experience. We've all seen things reported in the newspaper only to find out very soon, very quickly, that actually the newspaper only reported one side and there's another whole side of the story. We've been told things. I've been told that somebody got divorced, and then a week later I saw them walking hand in hand down the street. People hear things, misunderstand things, and we have to bear that in mind all the time. This was essentially a very, very, very quick, obviously there's much more depth to this. If anybody wants to ask a question, and they can write the question underneath and I'll try and respond. This is a very, very, very brief summary of the aspect of listening to Lashon Hara. So for those of us who've been working hard for these 3 weeks, working on the speech, this is the next level. This is something to take us forward, to work on trying not to listen to Lashon Hara. We may not be perfect. We may find it harder sometimes and easier other times. That's okay. Any small improvement in this area, whether it's speaking or listening, is going to bring us closer to the time when we merit a rebuilding of our temple, the rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash. May we merit to have it quickly, speedily in our days. If anybody would like to submit a question, they can, and please subscribe. There are going to be more videos, but Ezrat Hashem. I also do an almost weekly podcast together with my friend David Goodwin. You can find that on the Shmoozin website, the Shmoozin YouTube channel. That's SHMOOZIN apostrophe. Search for it. We do a weekly short podcast connected to the parasha. Wishing you all a good week.